Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you everyone for coming. I wanted to I'm going to let Scott introduce himself, but before that, I just wanted to say how Scott and I have known each other for like 3 years now, and I remember he became a customer of Tenzo. I think it was the month before the pandemic, and it was like February 2020, right? And so I just thought, give you an opportunity to tell us about you. You're doing some fantastic things now, and I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Scot. I'm the founder of Auden Hospitality, and essentially we're on a mission to make hotel F&B great again. So we're working with hotels to go into underperforming spaces, taking the data, looking at the opportunities, and then helping them implement those opportunities through the operation of a kind of 6 to 9 month period. And at the end of it, they have a space that was underperforming, now performing, and adding value to the hotel proposition. Don't forget restaurants. We work with restaurants as well. We help them, but more so we try and hook up the hotels with the restaurants and make all of the ecosystem work together. So, yep, long-time Tenzo customer as well. And I used to manage 85 restaurants, over 16 brands in 4 countries, and I was based in Dubai. And that was the 5th country, and the way I managed the system was by utilising data effectively to enhance the operation and work remotely with all my managers, and that was when I really started understanding how data can help make operations efficient and can help you as a leader proactively spend time with the right people to help improve performance. So that's my story, that's why we know each other.
That's how we know each other.
Looking forward to today.
And in his spare time, he's a little bit of a social media influencer also he's doing a LinkedIn Live this afternoon. Anyway, to get us started, I wanted to share a little bit about what we're seeing in the data in Q3 from a sample of about 200 restaurants across London and the Southeast. And really, so you can see on the screen, we're still seeing sales going up about 7.3%, average transaction value up 5.7%, so still some really good numbers there. The number of transactions has slowed the growth compared to last year a little bit, but still at 2%. That's really, really good. And I think if you think about this time last year, I think most people would have been a bit surprised about this. That everyone, is the sound not working? This time last year, people would have been a bit surprised that the numbers would be this good at this time. But still, if you compare it to what we're doing in terms of inflation, we're still seeing food inflation at 13.6%, so extremely high still. That's down from 19%, but still really high, and still wage growth being pretty high at 6.3%. So really, if you combine all that, although sales are still up, it's still very difficult, and the margins are getting squeezed. And so I wanted to reflect on 2 things, and Scott, you can kick this off. Is really, what can the industry do about this now? And then we'll talk about a little bit next year. What do we think is going to happen moving forwards? But let's start with what can we do?
I think what's really interesting about the numbers is the number of transactions happening is in the increase, which is the bit that I was the most surprised when we saw the figures, because the average spend I would expect to be going up because people are putting prices up, because cost and food is costing more. So all of those bits I expect to see a rise, but seeing those transactions rise as well is the bit that's encouraging. And I think when we look at Q3, and we had this discussion the other day, so I work with a lot of hotels. There was a really common theme over this summer, which was hotel occupancy was performing down on what the expectation was and what they were seeing previous years. And that's largely because of the scrapping the tax-free shopping. So the GCC market, the Middle East market, Dubai, Qatar, etc., are going to Europe now, not the UK, because of the tax-free shopping. So when you start looking at growth year on year, the growth is actually superseding what we're seeing on those numbers, because the amount of people travelling into London is actually down on previous years. So it's just a really interesting thing to know, is that actually it's quite a buoyant set of numbers, because the tourist numbers were down year on year. So that's the first thing I think I say. I talk a lot about personalisation, And we're looking at your inventory system as your kind of superpower to really drive personalized experience for guests. That means you might have to acquire them once, whether that's through a third-party booking engine, Google Ads, whatever it might be, but then you retain them long term. So when we work with clients, we always have that phrase of acquire once, retain long term, because that's the bit that's going to start seeing you grow your base business, which means it becomes more reliant. So you can forecast more accurately, you know the numbers that are coming through more accurately, and you're not spending repeated money on ads, third-party booking engines, and you're not resorting to impact marketing. And I call impact marketing those kind of big discount periods that you have to put on, the 50% offs, the 30% offs, that's driving people in the restaurant because you haven't got the base business, but it becomes a cycle where as soon as you stop that discount, the business drops off. So then you're back onto doing discounts, then it drops off, back onto doing discounts, and before you know it, you're seen as a discount restaurant, and it hurts.
And it's a difficult drug to get off.
It is, and especially when cost of goods is going up, and we've got a procurement business as part of what we do, and we're seeing the costs increase every single day. So when costs are going up, if you're having to discount every month to get people through the door, it's hurting, right? And that's where we're starting to see those margins really go tight. So by looking at how we get repeat business and bring them back again and again, personalize that experience, that for me is how you can create that solid base to be able to kind of grow sustainably and long term.
That's really interesting what you were saying there about like the GCC stopping the tax-free shopping, because that suggests that the local demand is even stronger than what the numbers suggest because there's less tourists. But do you think from a transaction size perspective, do you think there's still room there for restaurants to increase prices more or even to try to upsell more? Do you think are you seeing that with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people here are operators, but I think if we all look at businesses that we're running, we know there's more opportunity for upsells. We know there's more strategic ways to grow revenue. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes, I know in the business I run, sometimes looking at how we can put those extra £1, £2 on the selling price is a huge decision because we don't want to upset the people that we have. So then trying to push makes it more difficult, and this is why I always come back to retention. So I saw a stat once that guests coming back spend 67% more over their lifespan than a first-time guest. So what that means is if you have 100 first-time guests and you have 100 repeat guests, the increase in revenue on those 100 repeat guests is 67% more. So the ROI is clear. The ROI is clear. And we use 7 rooms. In all the businesses that I look after, we use 7 rooms. Why do I use 7 rooms? Because it automates that personalized experience. Hook it up to your EPOS system, put all the effort into guest profiles, build those guest profiles like Bibles so you understand everything about the guest, and then from there, personalize everything you can do. All the communications, all the offers, everything that you can do, personalize it to that guest, and make sure that you're using segmentation to its maximum, because that's how you can get the best engagement back, by talking to people like you're the only one who's being spoken to. And it makes a huge difference if you can do that. And when we're pulling EPOS data and we know that a guest really likes red wine, don't send them an offer for a white wine dinner because they're not going to buy it, right? So it's about personalising that experience, getting them come back again and again, 67% more. It's a huge stat, and that's why I always focus on retention.
That's amazing. I remember when I ran some restaurants called Hummus Brothers some time ago, and one thing it was a QSR, so people walking through the door and they ordered there and then. And one thing we really would try to push the team to, and we do a lot of training around this, is like the drinks. What was their favorite drink, and could they upsell the customer on that favorite drink? And the incredible thing was that it was a drink that there was 80-90% margin on this, so it meant the days where we had everyone in the team pushing that and making sure you upsold that, you could get that extra revenue that would make a big difference. And Scott gave me this. Well, we were discussing this the other day, and you had a really interesting idea of how you could do the scheduling around that.
Yeah, so I mean, this is back to when we first started using Tenzo, and we did this throughout COVID, and we started looking at what our people were doing in terms of ATV, average transaction value. And on the busiest days and the peak times, so QSR, 12 until 2, right? Every single QSR we've worked in, we would put our best people with the highest ATV on the tills at that time, because they're the people who make the most money, okay? So look strategically at the people that you're rostering and at the times they're being rostered, and how they can help you deliver that extra ATV. Because in my experience, putting someone who's really good at upselling on a till is much easier than asking someone who isn't good at upselling to do that job instead. So we used it to a huge advantage in COVID, and when we were furloughing people, we really looked strategically at who we were having to furlough, and we were keeping, this is very commercial, and I'm doing a talk tonight on retention of employees, so it's probably not going to go hand in hand, but we looked really strategically at who could make us the most money on the tills at the same time. And there's all this data, isn't there, about how many times you open a new till in QSR to get more people through in that peak period. But if you have people who can upsell naturally, it can be just as
it makes a huge difference, right?
Bigger benefit.
And the ones that do it well, the customer feels like they've had a great experience and they're leaving with something. But let's talk a little bit about the menu engineering side of things. How have you used that, like especially at this time where margins are really tight, food inflation we've seen is extremely high? How, what are some of the pieces of advice you're giving around that to really make sure that you're protecting your margin as much as possible?
Yeah, so I tell you what we're doing a lot of at the minute is we're looking at how we de-skill menial tasks in the kitchen. So we're going into the kitchen and we're looking at things that we can buy in instead of producing in-house for a number of different reasons. But if I take onions as an example, right? So a few years ago, buying in chopped onions was way more expensive and had a much bigger impact on food cost than it does today, because the people cost is significantly increased. Then you put into that staff turnover, then you put into that low skill that's coming into the industry, and then you put into that the fact that people don't turn up, do turn up, and then the new generation is much more creative than we've had before. Menial tasks start bringing down engagement of your people. So what we've been looking at is we go into a kitchen now and we look at all the menial tasks that are in there that we can either outsource or we can buy in. Because a number of reasons, now the cost benefit isn't that much different. The wastage is dealt somewhere else, so you're buying it in at a set price, so you don't have the wastage, and you're not making your people do menial tasks. And that has a big impact on the kitchen. So what you can do with them then is you're either running your kitchen more efficient, or you get them to focus on other things that can increase quality. And back to that retention and bit as well, you're improving your product and you're building more value for the guest, which creates a better memorable experience, which then brings them back again and again. So when we're looking at menu engineering, there's all the old ways to do it, the workhorse, the plough and all the rest, still work perfectly fine. We still use them in the operation. But we started looking at how we can take out menial tasks, how we can take out prep, to be able to then increase actual yield of menu items.
That's so interesting, because I remember when pre-pandemic we'd have that debate often, right? It's like, should we buy in? Actually, it's costing us a bit less to buy in and cut it and chop it ourselves. And now you're saying it's completely gone the other way. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
fascinating.
100%. I mean, we're working with a 5-star hotel right now, and they had 4 people in the pastry, and they were making all the bread fresh every day. They didn't have provers, so that was a headache for them. They were making 5 or 6 different types of bread. If I had to scale them, it was probably 6, 7 out of 10. And I had a conversation with the chef going, scrap it. Like, get rid of it. It's 7 out of 10. Why would you want to serve something 7 out of 10 in your business, right? And it was given away free at the start of the meal and all the rest of it. What we did was we focused on one product, focaccia. It's an Italian restaurant. We made the focaccia 10 out of 10 every time. And they had sourdough and other bits and pieces. We bought it in from bakery down the road, Chestnut Bakery in Belgravia. We bought it in it was just as cheap. The team were all really happy because they were proving in cupboards and trying to make things work. And the focaccia is outstanding. And it's just a great example of how you can take all that headache away from people, create a better cost base because of it, and increase the quality as well. So it's just about thinking about things a little bit differently, not getting too hung up on egos about making everything in-house, because sometimes people make it better outside, especially now with artisan people and all the rest. And really look at how you can bring maximum impact to your business by fundamentally improving product and improving guest experience. So that's how we look at
That's really smart. But there's one thing we used to do pre-pandemic, and I want to see if this still works. Is we'd look at our menu and look at and basically try to consolidate the menu, the inventory items we were ordering in. So trying to have a pretty diverse menu, but order in from less ingredients, so that you would be buying basically bulk in less ingredients. And that would reduce the price of these ingredients by like 30, 40, 50% sometimes, when you would just buy, like, instead of buying a kilo of tomatoes, you're buying like 10 boxes of 5 kilos or whatever. Do you see that working a lot still?
Yeah, definitely. I think consolidation of suppliers is always going to be the best thing, right? Because you're increasing purchasing power with the people that you're buying from, and you're getting better relationships and all the rest of it. So I'm a big advocate for trying to buy as much as possible from as little as possible for lots of different reasons. And I think, the other thing that we're noticing quite a bit, and I mentioned this to you the other day, was we're seeing live pricing really impacting lots of people in the business right now. And in our procurement side of the business, actually, these are the ones that we're converting the easiest. And what that is we've got a lot of probably people in here today advocating for, we will get 2 or 3 suppliers and we'll show you the best price for that product every single day. And it helps you build your basket, right?
And you're getting that best price from multiple suppliers. You're just
Exactly.
keeping an eye.
Yeah, multiple suppliers, best price, which is fine until those suppliers realize that you're not buying lots from them. And over time, they keep putting the price up. Suppliers talk to suppliers, put the price up. So all of a sudden, you're getting the best price of the day, but it's not necessarily from the cheapest supplier. It's from the cheapest supplier on the system that you've said, yes, I'll buy from. So where we're getting lots of impact at the minute is going into businesses and saying, do you know what? Pick a supplier, approve the quality, approve the product, put all your eggs in one basket, forge a relationship with those people, and you're going to see a better price. We're locking the prices for 6 months, which means you can forecast better, you can price your menus easier, and it just makes everything easier. And then, of course, COVID hits again. You've got a relationship you can use, you can leverage. If times are running hard, you can start talking to them, you can start looking at credit terms and things like that, so it can help cash flow. So don't get fooled by live pricing. That's all I'll say.
And by the way, on that, you said fixing the price for 6 months. We'd always have a debate around that, and our view was, if you fixed it, the supplier would basically be giving you a price where they knew they weren't going to lose some money in case the price was fluctuate down and up. Would you say is it better to have the visibility and have that fixed price, or actually let it float and then you're getting the best price of the day?
I think in the current market, or what we're seeing in the current market, with the inflation that's happening, locking in prices is definitely helping people. It's definitely proving cheaper over the course, and you're able to forecast much, much easier. 2 or 3 years ago, you probably would have seen better kind of going month to month, but there's too much fluctuation at the minute. I mean, we only have to take when the invasion happened and the price of flour, the availability of flour went up. If you have all your eggs in one basket and you're working with a supplier, you can then start talking about how you can secure those volumes, because they have a much better idea of what you're ordering, and you can make sure that you're first on the list. So there's all these things going on in the world right now that are impacting food. So you have to start playing a different game than what we were 2 or 3 years ago, and we have to realise that, because it is having a big impact on businesses from a day-to-day basis. And we're seeing it, and we're helping businesses get through it every day as well. So it makes a big difference.
And apart from staff retention, on the staff side of things, what have you seen works to really control that cost?
Yeah, I think productivity is becoming a big thing now. So the measurement of labour not being labour cost, but labour productivity. So how many people does it take to serve X amount of covers, and are you forecasting properly? Being a bit controversial, I don't think we have a proper agreed industry standard on measurement that everyone's working to, that everyone's benchmarking against. And I've seen things happening now where this might be changing, but I think we have to get a common standard across the industry that is going to, people can buy into and people can benchmark properly.
And on the common standard, are you saying the common KPI, so spend per labour hour or cost of labour as a percentage of sales, or are you going further than that?
I'm going further than that. I think we have to start benchmarking what we're doing in the industry differently to start seeing how successful we are with people. So, I mean, this is a completely different subject, but we're a transient industry. apart from a select few, right? So my theory on it would be, let's make use of those people while they're in the industry and look at how we can engage them to keep them here as long as possible before they go off and do bigger and better things, potentially, right? So for me, that's a completely different metric of whether you're successful as a business than labour cost per hour. To me, that's just a measurement of cost, and I think we should start looking at people as a different thing that can help increase experience, improve revenue, and all these type of things. Because when times get hard and you start looking at labour costs, there's only one way labour cost goes, and it's down. And I'm an ambassador at the Burnt Chef project, and when you start putting people under too much pressure, you start getting some of the scary stats that Chris and the team at the Burnt Chef are coming out with in the industry, which is just not good for traction of getting the best talent into the industry as well. So I think we've got to start looking at it differently to start seeing different results.
Totally. And I agree 100% with your point also around the fact that the upside is so much higher if you've got an engaged team that's able to, like, at busy times capture more sales, upsell more, and actually get a lot more revenue. So there's a big upside there too. Let's turn to next year. So this time last year, I think everyone was feeling a little bit like, oh my God, what's going to happen next year? Inflation is still here. Interest rates have gone up a lot. People are a little bit worried about next year. Are we going to be surprised again and everything's going to be rosy? And what are reasons around that? And what are things that potentially can't go wrong? What do you think?
Well, this is after 6 hours in a budget meeting yesterday, right? So we're forecasting it to be quite buoyant. Potentially election year, and we all know that things have to change if the current government want to have a chance of staying in without getting too political. So the housing market has got to start moving again, which is going to get people buying, it's going to get people moving. So I think next year could be buoyant. I think we've got to proceed with caution because food inflation isn't going to slow down. I was at a casual dining show last week, and there was a panel, and they were just saying that the food inflation is going to keep kind of going as it is, not necessarily rising, but it's definitely not going to come down. So margins are still going to be tight. I think where the current market is, there's a benchmark on what you can do with selling prices. So it's not going to be easy, but I think back to that whole bit about focusing on retention, getting a base core of business in there who you can rely on. That's how you can then start really looking at next year and being kind of buoyant around what you do.
It does feel like the reasons to be optimistic is, as you're saying, like election year next year, they're going to do something and help us. I think inflation coming down also, even though food maybe not that much, but overall, in terms from the consumer point of view, they're feeling like things are getting cheaper. Well, not cheaper, but they're not rising as much. The big one is the interest rate, which worries me. I think still with interest rates being this high and they're going to stay, it feels like it'll stay this high, that means people will probably have less disposable income. I think that's the only one that really worries me at this point, because I think people are not feeling like they've got as much disposable income to go out to a restaurant.
I mean, that's the one to watch, isn't it? That is the big one to watch. The other one that, and we work with a company called Energy Pal, and one of the big ones to look at now in the industry is that energy prices are starting to come down again, and they're starting to come back down towards kind of pre-invasion levels. So one thing that people might not know about energy is if you have an energy contract that's about to run out in the next 12 months, you can renew now today for the contract expiry date. So I would start looking at kind of some of the experts and the brokers out there who can start telling you whether it's the right time now to start locking in prices next year, because things are starting to come down. And we work with a restaurant in Covent Garden. It went from 50 grand a year to 150 grand a year, literally overnight from the invasion. We're now starting to see that come sub 100,000 pounds of energy bills. So 50 grand is a lot of money in a year. That's two people, right, on the floor. So I'm not saying it's necessarily going to go straight to bottom line because of people cost and things like that, but look at energy. That's a big opportunity for people right now. Minimum wage is going to go up again, right? Election year, if that's what's there's obviously going to be some kind of hefty increase probably, but I think the inflation is what's going to put kind of money back in people's pockets, mortgage rates, things like that.
Big time. The other one is really the strikes, right? Christmas last year we had a terrible set of strikes, like a lot of cancellations, a lot of restaurants. I don't know what that's going to look like this year, but hopefully, they'll get to a resolution, because that could have also a massive impact, right?
Yeah. I mean, last December, restaurant Covent Garden, it cost us 25 grand. The December strikes. So yeah, it was huge for us, and most of that was going to convert down as well because of the way the restaurant was structured. So I think it's a huge one to keep an eye on. Hopefully we don't see the same again, but we obviously had the one last week that took out Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, which is obviously, I'm sure the operators in the room will think the same. That's the peak days right now, so they know what they're doing, they're being tactical around what they're doing, and something's got to give, because it cannot keep going like this. And I think, as you start seeing Kate Nichols and from UK Hospitality and whoever kind of speaking to the political parties and stuff, we've got to get the message through at some point, because it's hurting people every time it happens.
Hopefully election year will mean that will get solved too, So we'll take, I don't know if there'll be any questions, but we'll take a few minutes to take any questions if there are any.
I run a small hotel in the Lake District, and it's a tiny little hamlet or Buttermere. But what we found is that last year, before my appointment came along, nobody was doing any yield management, and I've done a lot of yield management just over the last 2 decades. I track my sales and the occupancy side. Every day. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. And I wondered how you felt about yield. Does it have, it's had a huge impact on our business, because people are searching value for money. They want value for money because we're family friendly, we're pet friendly, So we've got to target that market. People are going to put into Google, I'm going to the Lake District for a walk, and we want them to come to us. Yeah? So, but yield management, I wonder, Scott, what your sort of thoughts are on a bit of yield.
And I absolutely buy into it, and I think what's really interesting is one of the most controversial posts I've done on social media over the last couple of months has been talking about dynamic pricing in F&B, and what's the difference between a promotion and dynamic pricing. It's really interesting, and it really gets people split, right? And I think it's the same in bedrooms, and it's about how you can yield that space for the best possible price. Let's not be silly about it, at the lowest cost base, adding the most value to the guest. Because fundamentally, my idea of value might be different to yours and everyone else in the audience. And this is where it always comes back to, and the reason I first got into hotels in the first place, it's where I started my career, is fundamentally hospitality is about delivering memorable experience, right? If you create an amazing experience, all of a sudden that value for money changes on if you don't deliver a memorable experience. So I think it's about making sure that you can deliver on the expectation of the price that you're charging the guest. And how many times do you go to places where, I was working with a hotel in Angel last year, big brand, give out warm cookies when you check in, might give it away, and they were charging, I think it was about £375 for a standard room. Year on year, that was up from about 225. Huge difference. And the GM said, my main gripe is my rates have gone up, my TripAdvisor has completely crashed because people no longer are coming here, are putting the value of 375 quid on X hotel. And that's always the balance of making sure you can deliver on what you're charging. That would be my opinion on yield.
It's funny how that promotional dynamic pricing just gets people like, it's the same thing, but it's just how you position it. Is there another question?
Hi there. Now we run like a service apartment. Are you guys seeing a decline in bookings because of cost of living data costs? So we're trying to improve the business. We see people very price conscious, as booking as before pre-pandemic.
So if you talk to Airbnb, no. Airbnb sales are going up, and I think what's happening now is people have I know I do, right? When I'm going to Australia in January, I've got a level on what I want to pay, and my expectations right now are having to drop based on where they might have been because of what I am prepared to pay. So I think it's back to that piece of, if I was staying in 5-star hotels before the living crisis, now I'm staying in 4-star hotels, my expectation is probably going to be higher than the average 4-star guest back to service departments. If I've been staying in hotels and now all of a sudden I have to stay in service departments, the expectation's got to deliver, and that's where it comes back to this pricing and yield pricing. Is you have to understand who your customer base is and make sure that you're delivering on what they expect, because that's what's going to make everything else kind of work in a cycle around. So we don't do too much with service departments, I'll be honest, but when I look at stats, and there's a PwC report coming out soon, it's going to be interesting to see how many people have gone from long stay hotel stays into service department stroke Airbnb, because I think there'll have been a big shift. But I know I'm looking at long stay stays very differently when I'm going abroad now in terms of staying for a long period of time. So.
But are you seeing that prices in the UK are like not falling as much because more people are staying in the UK? They're doing staycations. They're not traveling as much, or is that you're not seeing that?
Well, I mean, everyone knows that the prices of hotels, especially, has kind of gone through the roof, and rates are much higher now than they were before. I don't see them still continuing to rise in the hotels that we're working with and the businesses that we're working with. We've kind of seen them plateau a little bit. So they're still high on what they were year on year, but they're not increasing like month on month like they were before, yeah. And I think it's the same with restaurants now. I think, there was that kind of shock, probably same in the supermarkets where, weekly shop in the supermarket significantly shot up. Now it's kind of stayed at that level a little bit, and it's kind of leveled out, and at least you can plan a bit better. But we're one disaster, one invasion, one kind of bad summer away from it kind of going up again, and then it goes to a different level, doesn't it? So I think it's quite volatile from that perspective.
I think we're at time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.